Okay, you were ready to rock.
So I guess let's start by just telling me tell me how how you end up in Moab. How long your family's been here, if your family's been here for a while.
Well, I can do that. I can give you kind of my short version of my life history, how I ended up in the country, and go on from there. It might, I don't know, be interesting or not. But, see, I was raised out here at Thompson, so that's why I know a lot of the old-timers. And then I come back into when the uranium boom was here, and so on and so forth. So I don't know how you...
I'm going to stop for a second. Okay.
Great. So you can just stay like you are right there. That's perfect.
Can I move my legs at all? If I'm
Yeah, move your legs. I'm just mainly worried about you. If you move your head around like this, you'll go out of the frame because I got it pretty tight.
All right.
Okay. Let's see. So just, what do you remember about your childhood in Thompson?
Well, like I was telling you, a long story, but my great-grandparents and grandparents were pioneers in Kansas and the Panhandle of Oklahoma. And of course, my dad and mother was born and raised there, and in the 1930s, why my father went broke in the farming in the Dust Bowl. And he ended up in Grand Junction, Colorado. And he got a job on a ranch and up in the Buckcliff. And so then he sent for my mother and I, when I was 5 years old, my younger brother, and we rode the train in. And he worked on several of the ranches around Quebec, Colorado, and that area. And during the Second World War, he managed to get on the extra gang, and they were building new track and whatnot. So he ended up out at Green River, Utah. And so he moved my mother and I and my younger brother. And my infant brother, who passed away there at Green River, is buried there at Elgin. And in those days, why, they had the steam engine. So he worked on the coal chute, refueling the steam engines and water and etc. And after the war was over, why, they cut back, of course, and went to diesel. And so he ended up going to work on the section there at Thompson. And that was one of the my first acquaintances, I guess, with the people in Moab. I got ahead of myself a little bit. The first time I came to Moab, I rode down with a fellow from Price, and he sold cigarettes and candy and etc. And he always took the liquor orders from the liquor store. So that was part of his deal, that he would take the liquor orders in Moab because there wasn't a liquor store in Green River, and then he would return them. But anyhow, he wanted company, so he asked me, I was probably about 11 years old, if I'd like to ride down with him. Well, at that time, why, we got to Crescent Junction, of course, and it was gravel road into Moab. And we came down the old Dead Man's Hill and in, and so then, as I say later, why, we moved to Thompson. And you have to realize that everything in this area, from Moab clear to Durango, essentially, the reservation, Monument Valley, all that area, was very remote. And so consequently, everything practically that was needed either came in by rail at Thompson or went out by rail. And in them days, why, of course, the main industry in this area was livestock. And So in the spring of the year, why, they would ship truck out thousands of bags of wool. And they also had a shearing corral there at Thompson. Of course, in the fall, why, then they would ship the lambs to market and the cattle. And so one of my money-making projects is loading box cars with sheep and cattle and whatnot. And in those days, why, Indian Creek Cattle Company, of course, was the biggest outfit, them and Charlie Red from LaSalle. And Indian Creek, or I think probably then it was Gorp and Somerville, would drive 2 trailer herds a year, one from the LaSalle and one from the Blue Mountain. And they had the old chuck wagon, and just like in the old days, the cowboys. And so several of these cowboys were quite prominent characters in the country. One of them was Courtney Leverage, and of course the Gorts, and Andrew and Dutch Somerville, who incidentally, Dutch Somerville is still alive, and a fellow that was here by the name of Dale Hollyoak. He was just a young boy. And they were all cowboys. And of course, being kids and liking cowboys, why, we would go down and help them feed the horses and whatever little chores they wanted us to do, and probably mainly get in the road. But then, of course, in the night, why, in the evening, why, then they'd party. So we'd follow them around and they'd buy us pop, and we thought that was quite a thing to do, to follow the cowboys around partying at the Silver Grill in Thompson.
You know, I interviewed Stewart.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's quite a character.
Boy, he's a really neat
Yeah,
guy.
he's quite a man.
You have a story about him? You have anything that you remember about him?
I just remember him as being one of the cowboys, and his brother Andrew was with him, and I'll never forget, he always carried a bullwhip, and we were pushing cattle up the chute, and I was with him, and he popped the cow with that bullwhip, I guess, and for some reason or other, I rocked back, and I felt something on my chest, and he ran over and grabbed me, and he said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Why, yes, I'm all right. What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, that cow kicked you right square in the chest." And it just scared him to death, but I was fortunate that I was back far enough that I never even knew what happened. It happened so quick. But the Somervilles, of course, their relation was part of the Gorp and Somerville outfit in Indian Creek, and then he ran cattle for years up on the LaSalle Mountain. And then anyhow, to get on with the story, I also got to know Charlie Red, who was knighted by the Queen of England. And as a young boy, why, he would come out and every once in a while, and at one time he ran probably 40,000 head of sheep. And he made his big debut in the livestock business by utilizing the range. And he would run the sheep over the mountain in the spring of the year, and they would eat the larkspur, which is poisonous to cattle. In the wintertime, he would run the cattle over the range, on the winter range, and they would eat the halogeton, which is poisonous to sheep. So he proved his theory that he could utilize his range for both animals and without hurting it. And he also, of course, introduced probably the first purebred strain of Herefords in the area, in which his boy Paul today still has the Hereford herd, the purebred herd down at Paradox, Colorado, and they have a big sale every year. But one thing about Charlie, he if he ever met you, why, he never forgot you. And that's where I grew up. Why I ran into him several times at different times, and he always remembered who I was. But he was quite a man. He made quite a reputation for himself in the livestock industry. But getting on with my story, why I went on then when I was 12 years old, and my grandparents lived at Palisade, Colorado. And of course, I would go there in the summertime and work and make money for my school clothes and come back to Thompson and go to school in the winter. And the fact is, I think that there were three of us, I and Ernie Campbell and Lorna Malik, that graduated from Thompson in the 8th grade. And I'm not sure, but I think that's pretty close to the last graduating class they had there in Thompson. But Thompson was quite a colorful little place in the day. The cowboys come in, and the sheep herders, and the truckers, and it was quite flourishing. And of course, at that time, why, farm machinery, even new cars were brought in on the rail and then shipped to Moab. And consequently, I got acquainted with a lot of the old-timers that would come out and catch the train and so on and so forth. But getting on, why, as I said before, I went over to Palisade and then graduated from high school and ended up, make a long story short, going to work for Hidden Splendor Mining Company out on the Muddy River, which is out by Hanksville. And I learned to mine there from several, I worked for the old hard rock miners and taught me to mine, and I worked there in the Vernon Pick mine, the Delta mine, and this is a mine that he sold Floyd Oldham for $9 million in the Flying Fortress. It was quite a boom because they thought the whole mountain was ore, and it really wasn't there. But anyhow, getting on with the story, I eventually ended up getting married, and then I was out there working, and my wife had a medical problem before her oldest son was born, and so they asked me to transfer back to, if I would like to transfer to LaSalle. So I did, and I came over in 1957, and we lived one winter there at LaSalle, and then we moved into Moab. So that was my first time that I actually lived in Moab. And of course, in those days, why, the uranium boom was on, and things were quite flourishing. And I worked in quite a number of the mines. Worked in the Far West, the Columbia, the Ike-Nixon, the Louise, and I quit in 1961 and went down into New Mexico, and then ended up down later in Montezuma Creek and Bluff, and I worked for the St. Christopher Mission as a maintenance supervisor there. And that led to being, or getting appointed deputy sheriff. That's where I started my deputy law enforcement days, and of course that was under Rusty Musselman. And worked several years for Rusty, and of course we came back and forth to Moab, and he was from Moab.
Back to Rusty. Start with just talk about Rusty for a while.
Well, Rusty, he's quite a man. I had heard about Rusty Musselman. His father was owned the rock shop here at that time. Earlier he had the M4 Ranch, which is now Pack Creek. But he got a semi-retired, and incidentally he married one of my old high school teachers, Mrs. Moore. But he was quite a character. His name was Ross Musselman, which is actually Rusty's name is Ross also. And he had tell me about Rusty down in Bluff and what he had a trading post down there. And so I actually knew his father before I met Rusty. And I went to, as I said later, I ended up in Bluff, and we had a fire out at the mission before I was ever working there. And I heard about Rusty Musselman. So we were all busy fighting the fire, and here this guy was, and old bib over, he had his bib overalls on and his old sloppy hat, and of course that and black all over him, and that was my first sighting of Rusty Musselman. I thought he'd be riding the big white horse, I guess, or something, but anyhow, we became friends, and he later became the sheriff, and we had a lot of fun, and probably I think Rusty was one of the best, or the best sheriffs in San Juan County. He was very dedicated to the job. He was very dedicated to his men. And the thing about him was, if he had something to tell you, he told you, and he dropped it. He never dwelled on any one thing. He'd say, well, let's get on with the job, and that's in the past. And his men have walked ankle deep through hell for him. And he probably done at that time more to upgrade law enforcement in San Juan County than had ever been done. And we had 4 men, 4 deputies, and Rusty. And I was at Bluff, and later I went to White Mesa there below Blanding. And there, and then in the 70s, why, of course, we had another uranium boom. They were sinking shafts, Boyle Brothers, and Centennial for Rio Algam, and a lot of drilling going on, a lot of activity out at LaSalle. So Rusty transferred me up to LaSalle, and I was deputy there for 2 years. But getting back to Rusty, he probably one of the most knowledgeable men I ever knew about the world and the different peoples and the culture. He, of course, talks Navajo. He has a lot of Indian friends. The Indian called him Salala Chi, which is the Red Sheriff. And he tried to treat everybody fair, and he did. And he was very talented. He, of course, worked earlier in the movies. Back in the John Wayne days, he worked with them, and he knows the culture, I guess, or the ways of the Old West and times, and he's very knowledgeable in constructing movie sets and all this type of thing. And he's 79 years old, and he's still going. And he's really been an asset to the country. And I guess to sum it up, why, somebody asked me one time, it was during an election, what I thought of Rusty. I said, well, there's one thing about him. I said, you don't have to look over your shoulder. All you got to do is stay up with him. And I really believe that if there would have been a shooting or whatever, he would have preferred that he got injured rather than one of his men. He was that, and we were dedicated to him too. So one of the very rare things, I guess, you have in life. But anyhow, Rusty left office, and so I decided to go back or go into the river business, which something I've wanted to do ever since I was a boy. I was Bert Loper's paper boy, who was one of the old river runners in Green River. And over the years, I met Norman Neville and Don Harris. And of course, in them days, they were just starting the, probably the beginning of the river business. The Hatchies up in Verl, they were already in it. Kenny Ross was down at Bluff. And who incidentally I helped Kenny, and then he taught me to be a boatman, and so I learned to run the river under Kenny Ross, who was quite a river runner, very knowledgeable person. And so I decided I wanted to go into my own business, which I did. So I moved down to Mexican Hat for a time, for a couple of summers, and then Mitch Williams, who became my partner, the water was down doing the San Juan on the, so we came back to Moab. And so I lived there in Moab, and it seemed like Moab has got a magnet because I always come back to Moab. And I left from time to time, different jobs. At that time, I had 2 boys in high school, and so in the winter time, while I worked in the mines, I worked on the drilling rigs and anything that might, logging, anything I make a living at. And the boys, I taught both my sons to run the river, and which they still both run the river. And then I left, and I worked there several years. I worked out at the Atlas Mill. I ran a radiator shop a couple of times. I worked for Union Carbide as a mechanic for them. And then in 1990, I got the opportunity to go down to the Grand Canyon on the North Rim and wrangle for the mule ride. So that was quite an experience. I went down there for one summer, and then down to Mesquite, Nevada, and then came back to Moab. So Moab's quite a unique town. There's a lot of people that are gone now, that with character. We just lost our old mayor, Winifred Bunch, who was the mayor back in the 50s and had growing pains, and he was quite a renowned mayor. He was well known all over the state. And so I've seen a lot of the old timers come and go that contributed a lot to the community and to the area. So I look out the window here, I can see the old Moab Co-op building, and that was, when I was here, that for years, that was Ralph Miller Sr.'s business, and young Ralph, later they moved out and built the, what is now the IGA supermarket, and that was quite a feat. And Ralph Sr., he's a county commissioner and very dedicated to the country. And we've had a lot of growing pains, I guess, over the years. And of course we have people on both sides of the tourist industry and the industrial area. And the thing that bothers me about the new concept is sometimes I think that certain people don't value and appreciate the things that the old-timers and the livestock industry and the mining and the oil contributed to this area. And they wouldn't even, we wouldn't have today if it hadn't been for those different financial things involving the community. They built schools, they paved the streets, they upgraded the swimming pool, they built the swimming pool, they have a library, a museum, and all these things were built from the taxes derived from Atlas Minerals and from the oil companies, and that has really bothered me because these people don't sometimes I don't think live in the real world. They don't see the hard work and things that people done or appreciate it, I guess. And a lot of the old timers are very pro against tourism. And actually tourism now is one of our main industries, and we're fortunate to have it. We're lucky that we have the foreign market that we do. And I've been in it back when I was running the river and guiding, why practically all our clientele was American. And now why our economy and that, and so now we have the foreign market. And the film industry is another great asset to our area. Right now we have, I guess, about 2 or 3 films that are going on. One's The Riders of the Purple Shade. The other is, they got done with Cheyenne. And so we're having a lot of growing pains. And a couple of years ago, why, the film industry brought in $11 million into this area. And that's a lot of taxing. I'm afraid that our county commissioners and city councilmen sometimes don't appreciate this and don't see I say they can't see the forest for the trees. And but I have been a member, I am a member, and am a director of the Moab Film Commission. And Betty Stanton, who is running it there, who is the executive secretary, she has done more for this community than the great deal of the people know. She's the one that got the grant block for the CIB, for the, what ended up being the Stuntman Hall of Fame, for the rodeo grounds. And we're very fortunate to have Betty come into this area. Of course, she is from old blood stock. Her father was Duke Larson, who his family was one of the old-time settlers. And Betty spent several years around Kanab, working with the movie and the film industry. So we're very fortunate to have her, and I understand she's going to retire next May, and I hope that the county commission and that have the foresight to get somebody in there that can carry on, because it's a very vile and profit industry in our area.
I want to stop. I just was thinking I had somebody tell, it was Jimmy Walker and Ray Tibbetts. I talked to them yesterday, and they were talking about downwinder settlements.
Yes.
Did you get a downwinder settlement?
I didn't get the downwinder settlement. What I got was the Radiation Compensation Act. Now this we put through for miners that have mined up to 1971. That was the cutoff date, and it was for the back in those days when before OSHA and MSHA and government regulations, and many of the miners, including myself, ate a lot of dust and dirt, and of course we thought we were young and tough and mean, and so the government came up with this, that if you had lung damage in that, you have to prove it through x-rays and pulmonary function tests, and then and lung cancer. And most of it, or a good deal of it, I'm one of the fortunate ones, the widows or the kids are the ones that got the settlement, not the miners themselves. And so that's really what that's what it is for the old miners that worked back in the 50s and 60s and ate a lot of the dust and smoke. And I guess we were forewarned what happened, and I don't know whether it's right or not, but that's the way it is. So, but it has helped. I've helped 2 or 3 widows with it and getting it done, and they needed it. And most of them are, I have a lot of friends that are up on Booth Hill I work with. Of course, a good many of them were older than I were, so, you know, it isn't. They have the big controversy now out here about the Atlas Mill, what they're going to do with it. And